You know that moment when you have to choose between what's right and what's wrong, but your family is struggling, and an opportunity appears right in front of you that could solve all your problems? That's me. My name is Ethan. I'm a rideshare driver here in Orlando, and I'm going to tell you about the night that almost destroyed my life, or maybe saved it. To this day, I'm not sure. What I do know is that this decision changed everything, and you won't believe what happened when I turned down an offer of $15,000 cash. 15,000, just imagine, ... Look, I'll be straight with you from the start. Life wasn't easy, not at all. It was March 2023, and I was driving through the Orlando Madrugada like a maniac, looking for a good fare. My wife, Sarah, had been unemployed for almost 8 months after the retail store where she worked closed, and Leo, my 6-year-old boy, needed expensive medication for his bronchitis, which was always acting up. A $250 prescription that we had to buy every month, and sometimes we just didn't have the money. Have you ever seen a little kid struggling to breathe in the middle of the night, wheezing, and not being able to give them the medicine they need? It just breaks your heart. You know, the desperation you feel is indescribable. At that time, I was doing everything I could to earn a decent living. I worked from 5 in the afternoon until 5 in the morning, non-stop, no days off. Weekends, forget about it. It was one ride after another, always hoping to get a passenger who would pay well or give a tip that would make the day. But March was always a slow month, wasn't it? The holidays were over, people were still recovering from their expenses, and the tourist movement was slowing down. It was almost 2 in the morning when I was parked at a Shell station on International Drive, feeling a little dejected, looking at the dark interstate and thinking about my life. My tank was on empty. I had been driving all night and had only done 3 lousy rides, 2 for drunks, who almost threw up in my car, and 1 for a couple who fought the whole time. Total earned $28. With gas at $4 a gallon, I had spent more on fuel than I had made. I was seriously thinking about selling the car and finding another job, because the situation was becoming unsustainable. I had already looked at some job openings for security guard, retail clerk, things like that, but nothing that paid enough to support the family. And at my age, 34, without a college degree, it's hard to compete in the market, isn't it? My head was full of bills to pay. Rent 2 months behind, credit card maxed out, 2 car payments overdue. And on top of all that, Sarah had told me that morning that the grocery money was gone and we only had pasta and eggs at home. Ethan, I don't know what to do anymore, she had said, and I saw tears in her eyes. I was about to start the car and drive home, already imagining how I was going to explain to Sarah that another night had been a bust when it happened. My phone buzzed with that sound every driver knows well. When I looked at the app screen, my heart even picked up speed. It was a ride from a downtown penthouse to a town near the coast. A good fare, about $40, which was almost what I had made all night. And I thought, all right, maybe I'll get a good tip and at least cover my gas for today. Maybe I'll even have some change left for breakfast. I got into my 2015 Honda Accord, which is my baby. You know, I bought it used with a lot of sacrifice. Financed over 48 months, but I treat it like it's brand new. That car is my tool, my life, my bread and butter. Without it, I'm nothing. And I headed towards the pickup spot in that fancy part of downtown, hoping it would be a smooth ride to end the night and at least get home with something in my pocket. When I got to downtown, on one of those chic streets full of high-rise buildings and imported cars parked on the curb, I saw her, Yasmin. The first thing that caught my attention was that she was alone on the street at that time of the night. And believe me, even a nice downtown can be a bit dangerous at night. Second thing, she was really, really beautiful. A young woman, maybe 20-something at most, long, straight hair that shone under the street lamp, all dressed up as if she had just come from some high-end party that only rich people go to. A very short black dress, the kind that costs more than 2 months of my salary, high heels that made a little click on the pavement when she moved, a designer handbagger, Louis Vuitton, I think, that Sarah always drooled over when she saw it in a mall window. Her perfume reached my nose before she even got into the car. It was one of those expensive, imported perfumes that leaves a trail in the air and you can smell it from a distance. Completely different from what I was used to. My normal passengers smelled like sweat, cheap booze, or at best, some drugstore cologne. "Good evening, are you Ethan?" she asked in a soft, slightly husky voice, like an actress in a movie. She had a different, more refined accent, not from around here. "Yes, ma'am. Yasmin, right? The town near the coast, correct?" I replied, trying to be professional, but I have to admit I was a little intimidated. It wasn't every day I picked up a passenger of that caliber. She got into the back seat without really answering, just nodded and closed the door carefully. that delicate way that polite people do. Through the rearview mirror, I noticed she was a little nervous, messing with her iPhone, one of the latest ones that cost around $1,000, and looking back every once in a while as if she was running from someone or expecting someone to show up. I thought it might be some kind of relationship drama, you know? Those things you get involved in by accident. Maybe she had a fight with her rich boyfriend, or had snuck out of the house, who knows? Rich people have different kinds of problems than we do. I adjusted the mirror to get a better view of her and started the car. "Everything all right, ma'am? Everything okay?" I asked, because her behavior seemed a little strange. "Yeah, I'm fine. You can go. Just tired," she answered, but kept playing with her phone and looking out the back window. We left the city center and headed towards the interstate. The traffic was clear, which is rare in Orlando. Even at night, there's usually some traffic jam, some construction, some accident, but this time the road was clear. I even thought, great, this will be a quick and easy ride. I put on some quiet music on the radio. That country music everyone loves, Luke Bryan singing "Play It Again," and kept driving down the highway. The city lights passed by the window, few cars on the road, that late night vibe that I knew well after so many years of driving. She was quiet for about 10 minutes, just on her phone and looking out the window. I respected the silence, because some passengers don't like to talk, you know? Especially a woman alone at night, it's better not to ask too many questions. But then, all of a sudden, she looked up and caught my eye in the rearview mirror. Our eyes met for a second, and I felt something strange. I can't explain it well, but it was like she was studying my face, analyzing every detail, trying to figure something out about me. "Ethan," she said suddenly, startling me because I had gotten used to her silence. "Yes, ma'am? Can I ask you a personal question?" I thought it was strange, but I answered nicely. "Of course. Go ahead. Do you have a family?" The question caught me a little off guard. It wasn't normal for a passenger to want to know about the driver's private life, but I answered anyway, because I saw no problem talking about my family. "Yes, ma'am. A wife and a 6-year-old boy." "Oh, that's good." She smiled for the first time since she got in the car, but it was a kind of sad smile. "You know, family is important, isn't it? It's the most important thing in the world." She went quiet again, but I felt more questions were coming, and they were. In the next few minutes, she would ask questions that would completely change the course of that night. We passed a big shopping center, and that's when she asked me to stop at a gas station. She said she wanted to buy cigarettes. I thought it was strange because she didn't look like a smoker, but I stopped. She got out, bought the cigarettes, and when she came back, she had 2 cans of beer. "Want one?" she offered. "No, thank you. I don't drink and drive." "You're very straight and narrow, aren't you?" she said, and I didn't know if it was a compliment or sarcasm. We continued our trip. She opened one of the beers and started drinking it slowly. The smell of the alcohol mixed with her perfume filled the car. It was an expensive perfume, the kind you can smell from a distance. "Ethan, tell me something. Have you ever been in real need?" The question caught me off guard. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw she was watching me closely. "Yes, ma'am, I have. Anyone who's poor knows what it's like to be in a tight spot." "And would you do anything for your family?" I started to get suspicious. "Anything honest?" "Yes." She laughed softly. "Honest, ... Interesting." We reached the entrance of the small coastal town, and she asked me to keep going. "I've changed my mind. Let's go somewhere else." "But ma'am, the ride is to here. I'll pay the difference. Just go." On the app, she canceled the original ride and started a new one, putting in a destination I didn't know. It was on a side road, after the coastal town, almost to the next city. It was a remote place, but the ride value had gone up to almost $100. "Are you sure this is the right place?" I asked. "I am. It's a private party. A bit hidden, you know." It didn't make much sense, but the money was good, and I needed it. I took the road. The further away from the city we went, the stranger she became. She started asking me personal questions about my wife, my son, if I was religious, if I had ever cheated, things like that. "Sorry for being so nosy, but you seem like a different kind of man," she said. "Different how?" "I don't know. ... Honorable." It's hard to find an honorable man these days. The road was getting darker and more isolated. We left the urban area completely and entered a dirt road full of potholes. My Accord swayed from side to side, and I was worried about the car's suspension. Only my headlights were lighting up about 50 yards ahead and on both sides. There was only tall grass and some huge trees that looked like ghosts in the darkness. Yasmin had already drunk almost all of the second beer and was visibly more relaxed, talking more, laughing sometimes, but always with that mysterious tone that was making me nervous. Her questions had become even more intimate and direct. "Tell me something, Ethan," she said, leaning forward a little between the seats. "Is your wife pretty?" "Yes, she is. Very pretty, I answered, a little awkwardly. Are you happy? I mean, in your marriage? In bed? Things like that? Man, what an invasive question. Look, ma'am, that's very personal. ... Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. It's just that I like to understand people. You know how they live, how they think. She laughed and took another sip. You seem like a man who is faithful to his wife. I am. I love Sarah very much. But a man is a man, isn't he? Sometimes temptation appears. ... I didn't like where the conversation was going. Not for me. It doesn't. I respect my family. That's beautiful, she said. But there was a sarcasm in her voice that bothered me. We continued for another 20 minutes on that horrible road. My GPS showed we were getting further and further away from any populated area. It was just woods. A few abandoned houses once in a while, some empty ranches, the perfect place for a robbery, a kidnapping, those things you see on the news. Ma'am, are you sure it's this way? Because this is very remote, I said, trying not to show the nervousness that was growing inside me. I'm sure. We're almost there. She finished the beer and threw the can on the floor of the car. These exclusive parties are always in isolated places. It's to maintain privacy. You understand? I didn't understand anything, but I kept driving. That's when she asked me the question that changed everything. Ethan, can I make you a proposition? My heart started racing. What kind of proposition? Pull over up ahead. She pointed to a curve where there was a huge, half-fallen tree that formed a dark shadow on the road. I stopped exactly where she told me to. We were literally in the middle of nowhere. No light from a house, no sound of a car, nothing. Just the sound of crickets and the wind in the leaves. She got out of the back seat and came to the front, sitting right next to me. Her perfume became even stronger, and I could see her face better in the dim light of the car's dashboard. She was really beautiful. One of those women who stop traffic when they walk down the street. Ethan, you seem like a man of your word, she said, looking me directly in the eyes. I am. And a man who needs money. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. My heart was beating fast, but I didn't say anything. I knew something very serious was coming. I have a proposition for you. A proposition that can solve all your financial problems. What kind of proposition? I asked, though I already had a feeling. She opened that expensive Louis Vuitton bag and took out some stacks of money from inside. Real money, $100 and $50 bills. All new, smelling of the bank. There were several stacks. More money together than I had ever seen in my entire life. $15,000. Ethan, in cash. Right now, in your hand. Folks, you have no idea what went through my head at that moment. $15,000. It was more than I earned in 4 months, working day and night. It was Leo's medicine for 2 years. It was the rent paid up, the credit card debt gone, the fridge full, the peace of mind I hadn't had in years. 15,000 ... for what? I asked, although I already knew the answer. She moved closer, put her hand on my right arm, very slowly. Her hand was soft, with manicured nails, a diamond ring on her finger. For you to stay with me, right here, right now. There it was. The trap was set, and I had walked right into it. And look, if you think it was easy to process that, you're wrong. My mind was in a total whirlwind. $15,000 on one side, my family on the other. Financial need on one side, my moral values on the other. The strongest temptation I had ever faced in my life. Ma'am, are you serious? I managed to ask with a voice that was a little choked up. Very serious, Ethan. She showed me the money more closely. $15,000 counted out. You take this money, get home tomorrow morning, and all your problems are solved. My hands started to shake. It was more money than I had ever seen together in my whole life, and it was there in front of me, offered on a silver platter. I just had to forget my principles for a few minutes. But then, the image of Sarah sleeping at home came to my mind, trusting me. The image of Leo in his little bed, thinking his dad was a hero. And I also thought about God, about the upbringing my parents gave me, about the values they planted in me since I was a little boy. Man, what a difficult moment. What an impossible choice. And the worst part was that I knew whatever decision I made would change my life forever. I stayed in total silence for about 5 minutes, just staring at the empty road ahead of us. The car's headlights lit up about 20 yards of cracked asphalt and woods on both sides. Yasmin waited, patiently, without rushing, as if she knew exactly what was going on in my head. She knew she was messing with something very deep inside me. It was as if time had stopped. I could hear my own heart beating, the sound of her breathing, the wind rustling the leaves outside. Everything seemed amplified, as if my senses had become more acute because of the tension. Ethan, she said softly, breaking the silence. I know you're thinking about your family. It's normal. That was exactly what I was thinking about Sarah lying in our bed, sleeping peacefully, not imagining that her husband was there in the middle of nowhere, being tempted with a fortune, about Leo in his room, breathing with difficulty because of his bronchitis, needing those expensive medicines that I couldn't properly afford. 15,000 is a lot of money, I said, more to myself than to her. It is. It's enough to change your life completely. She took one of the stacks and put it in my hand. Feel the weight of it. Feel what it's like to have the solution to all your problems in the palm of your hand. The money was heavy. New paper money, still with that characteristic bank smell. Bills in sequence that had never left the bank. They were $100 bills. Each stack must have had at least 2,000. My hand trembled, holding it. My family really needs this money, I said, feeling my voice a little choked up. I know it does. That's why I chose you. She moved closer, and her perfume became even stronger. You're not like the other men, Ethan. You have character, and a man of character deserves to be rewarded. It was a dangerous logic. She was making me believe that accepting it would be almost a virtue, a prize for my integrity, as if I deserved that money precisely because I was a good person. And your wife will never know, she continued. You go home, tell her you had a great ride, a generous tip. She'll be happy, you'll be at peace. Everyone wins. I thought about the happy look on Sarah's face when I came home with that money. I thought about going to the pharmacy and buying Leo's medicine without having to look at the price. I thought about paying the overdue rent, paying off the credit card, doing a big grocery run, but I can't accept it. The words came out of my mouth before I even thought about it. It was as if a higher power had spoken for me, as if all the teachings of my parents, all the education I received, all the faith I had come together in a single voice inside my head. Yasmin looked at me in surprise. Even she, who had planned all this, didn't expect such a quick and firm answer. Are you sure, Ethan? $15,000? Think about it. I'm sure. I'm sorry, but I can't. I gave the stack of money back to her, and I confess, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. It was as if I was throwing away the chance to solve all my problems at once. Yasmin took the money back and looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was something different, as if she had discovered something very important about me. And then she started to cry. It wasn't a forced cry, one of those you do to get something. It was a real, deep cry, one of those that comes from deep in the soul. Thick tears rolling down her face, sobs that she tried to stifle, her body trembling. Why are you crying? I asked, completely confused. I didn't understand anything that was happening, because you're the first, she managed to say between sobs. The first, what? The first man who said no? My mind couldn't process that properly. What do you mean, the first? What are you talking about? She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and tried to compose herself. Ethan, I need to tell you something. This whole story about the party, the destination near the coast, all of it was a lie. A lie. I'm not going to any party. I do this on purpose. I test men. She paused and looked me in the eyes, and you're the first one to pass the test? Now, I was completely lost. What test? What are you talking about? I offered this same amount to other men before you. Rideshare drivers, taxi drivers, married men who seemed honest and hardworking like you. She took a deep breath before continuing. And all of them, without exception, accepted. The information hit me like a punch to the stomach. All of them. All of them. Some didn't even think twice. Others hesitated like you, but in the end, they always accepted. She shook her head, as if remembering something very painful. Until today, you were the only one who refused. But why do you do this? And that's when she started telling me her story. A story that would make me understand why a rich and beautiful woman like her was there in the middle of nowhere, testing the honesty of strangers. It was a story of betrayals, disappointments, and a wounded soul trying to find a reason to still believe in human goodness. And without knowing it, had just become a part of that story. That's when she started telling her story. And, my goodness, what a story. Yasmin was from a wealthy family in Miami, one of those traditional families that have their name on buildings in the city. Her father, a doctor, had a real estate company that built high-rises all over the East Coast. Her mother was a respected pediatrician. She grew up in a penthouse apartment, went to the best private schools, spoke 3 languages, and had her own car since she was 16. I never lacked anything material, she said, wiping her tears. But they failed to teach me about people's character. At 18, when she started college at a big university, she fell head over heels for a guy she met the first week of class. Kevin, his name, was a hunky guy, 6 feet tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, the kind all the girls swooned over when he walked down the hall. The guy was from a lower middle class background, a scholarship student, and lived in a cheap dorm downtown, and Yasmin, completely enchanted, thought she had found the love of her life. He was different from the rich boys I knew, she explained. He seemed humble, hardworking, a dreamer. She did everything for this Kevin. Literally everything. She paid for his meals in college, bought him clothes, shoes, even textbooks. When he said he needed a laptop for his schoolwork, she ran to the store and bought the most expensive one they had. When he said the dorm was bad and was interfering with his studies, she rented a small apartment just for him. I thought I was helping the man I loved grow in life, she said, her voice still choked up. I thought that's what people who love each other do for one another. The relationship lasted 3 years. 3 years of Yasmin paying for practically everything in Kevin's life. And the worst part? She thought it was normal, that it was true love, that she was investing in their future. On her 21st birthday, her father gave her a lump sum to invest, $200,000, an amount meant for her to start learning how to manage money, to have financial independence. Instead of investing it, she gave it all to Kevin to start a business. Do you know what happened? She asked, looking at me with those red, teary eyes. He cheated on you. Worse than that. She took a deep breath before continuing. He took all the money and disappeared. He left with another woman, $200,000. All the money she had, which was supposed to be her future, the guy took, but it wasn't just any woman. It was Jessica, a close friend of hers since high school, someone she trusted blindly. They had planned everything. She continued. Jessica got close to me just to learn about my financial situation, and when she told everything to Kevin, they came up with the perfect plan. The guy not only took the money, but also left several debts in her name. Loans he had taken out, using her as a guarantor. Credit cards he had applied for in her name, and bank loans she had signed without really knowing what she was signing. By the time I found out everything, they were already living in California, with a purchased apartment and a brand new car in the garage, with my money. But the story didn't stop there. Yasmin was devastated, spent months in depression, in therapy, trying to understand how she could have been so naive. Her parents, who had never really liked Kevin, were furious, but ended up helping her pay off the debts to clear her name. Then I thought, I'll never get involved with a user again. Next time, I'll choose better. 2 years later, in New York, where she had gone for her master's to forget the past, she met Mark, a doctor, an orthopedic surgeon, with his own practice and a new car. A man who apparently had his life together and didn't need her money. Mark was completely different from Kevin. She explained. Elegant, mature, successful. I thought this time I had found someone on my level. The relationship seemed perfect. He paid for their dates, took her to expensive restaurants, they traveled to sophisticated places. For months, he didn't ask for any financial favors. Yasmin even thought she had overcome the trauma of her first relationship. Until one day, he came to her with a story. His practice was having difficulties. Some equipment had broken, and he needed a loan to invest in new machines. Just until I get organized, he said, about $80,000. I'll pay it back in 6 months with interest. And Yasmin, who thought she had learned to be more cautious, ended up lending the money. After all, he was an established doctor, with assets, with a reputation to protect. Guess what happened? He disappeared with everything, she said, shaking her head. He closed the practice, sold the equipment, took the money, and left. I found out later that he had pulled the same scam on 3 other women in New York. $80. Once again, Yasmin had been deceived by someone she trusted. And after Mark, there was David, then Andrew, then Michael. She quickly told the story of each one, and they were all variations on the same theme. Men who took advantage of her good faith to get financial gain. David was a businessman. He asked for money to save his company from bankruptcy. Andrew was an artist. He needed investment for an exhibition that never happened. Michael was a lawyer. He made up a story about an unmissable business opportunity. They all let me down, she said. They all lied. They all used me. And the worst part, they were all men who seemed decent, honorable, trustworthy. That's when she started to develop a dangerous theory in her head, that every man has a price, that everyone can be bought, and that deep down, no one is any good anyway. That's when I started with the tests, she confessed. Every time I met a man who seemed different, who seemed honest, I would make the proposition. Her method was always the same. She'd pretend to be a rideshare passenger, drive the guy to an isolated place, and offer a high amount of money in exchange for a sexual act. Everything documented, everything planned, everything coldly calculated, and they all accepted. I asked, still trying to process all that information. All of them, without exception, until today. She looked at me with a mix of sadness and admiration. You were the first one who said no. Guys, imagine how I was feeling at that moment? On one hand, I was immensely proud of having resisted the temptation. On the other hand, I felt a deep pity for that woman who had completely lost faith in humanity because of so many scams she had fallen for. And more than that, I started to understand that maybe my refusal had a much bigger meaning than I imagined. Maybe I had just helped a lost soul find a little bit of hope in the world again. You can't imagine what I was feeling at that moment. It was a mix of pride, sadness, compassion, and a huge responsibility. On one hand, I was immensely proud of having resisted the temptation and having proven to myself that my values were real, not just talk. On the other hand, I felt a deep pity for that woman who had completely lost faith in humanity because of all the scams she had experienced in her life. Yasmin, I said, choosing my words carefully, not everyone is the same. You just had bad luck finding men with no character. I thought that after Kevin. I thought it again after Mark and after David. And Andrew. She wiped her tears with a tissue she took from her bag. At a certain point, you stop believing it's bad luck and you start accepting that it's just reality. But it's not. You're wrong. I turned completely to face her in the car seat. There are good men out there, a lot of them. You just haven't been lucky enough to find one. She looked at me with an expression I will never forget. It was as if she desperately wanted to believe what I was saying, but couldn't. As if there was a war going on inside her head between hope and skepticism. Ethan, do you know how many men I tested before you? How many? 37. The answer shocked me. 37 married men, fathers, who seemed like decent people. Drivers like you, taxi drivers, even a church minister. My God, 37 people. And I was there being number 38. Do you know what the fastest response I ever got was? She continued. 2 seconds. The guy didn't even think. He just said, "Where's the money?" And the longest, 15 minutes. A taxi driver in New York, a father of 3 who fought with his conscience just like you. But in the end, he accepted. She sighed deeply. At least you gave me back the hope that there are still honorable people in this world. We sat there talking for another full hour. She told me details of the other tests, told me how each disappointment hardened her heart more and more, how she had reached the point where she couldn't trust anyone anymore. Do you know which was the worst of all? She asked. Which one? A guy in Boston, a rideshare driver just like you, married for 15 years, 3 small children. When I made the offer, he not only accepted, but also told me he was going to lie to his wife about where he got the money. She shook her head, disgusted. He was going to say he won it in a raffle. Man, that gave me a pain in my chest. To imagine a family man not only cheating on his wife, but also lying about the origin of the money, ... But you made me rethink everything, she said, looking at me with gratitude. You showed me that there are still good people, that there are still men who put their values above money. Look, Yasmin, I'll be honest with you. It wasn't easy. That $15,000 would have solved my life. I paused to choose the right words. But there are some things that money can't buy. And one of them is being able to look in the mirror every day without feeling ashamed. She smiled for the first time since she got in my car. A genuine smile, not that sad one from before. Do you know what else impressed me about you? She asked. What? The way you talked about your family, with so much love, so much respect. It was clear that you really love your wife and your son. It was true. I really did love them, and it was by thinking about them that I managed to resist the temptation. Yasmin, can I give you some advice? Of course. Stop with these tests. It's not good for you or for others. I took a deep breath before continuing, and try to trust people again. Slowly, carefully, but try. Not everyone is like those guys who hurt you. She was thoughtful for a few minutes. You're right. These tests became a sick obsession, a way of confirming that the world is bad, so I wouldn't have to open up to anyone again. Exactly. You're protecting yourself, but you're also closing yourself off to the possibility of meeting good people. Ethan, she said. After a while, can I ask you something? Of course. Go ahead. Will you pray for me? It's been a long time since I talked to God. I don't even know if he still hears me. That question moved me deeply, because there was a woman who had lost faith not only in men, but also in God, and she was asking me to intercede for her. Of course I'll pray for you, and he always listens. You know, God never gives up on us, even when we give up on him. Took her hand for a moment, and you can talk to him whenever you want. He's always there, waiting. She started to cry again, but this time it was a different kind of crying. It wasn't despair, it was relief, as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for making me believe that there is still goodness in the world. Thank you for testing me without my knowing, I replied. It made me certain of the kind of man I am, and that's priceless. We put the stacks of money back in her bag, and I started the car to go back to Orlando. The return trip was completely different from the way there. She was lighter, more hopeful, talking about her plans to rebuild her life, maybe go back to therapy, try to reconnect with her faith. You know, you changed my life today, right? She said when we were approaching the city. You changed mine too. You showed me that doing the right thing is worth more than any money in the world. And they're driving back. Through the streets of Orlando, in the early morning, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace of mind. The feeling that I had made the right choice, that I was the man I wanted to be, that my kids could be proud of their father. Sometimes we don't know it, but our attitude can change someone's life forever. And that night, both Yasmin and I came out transformed from that encounter in the middle of nowhere. When we arrived back downtown, right where everything had started, it was almost 5 in the morning. The sky was already starting to lighten on the horizon, that faint light that comes before the sunrise. The streets were completely empty, just a few sanitation workers and a car or two driving by. She paid me for the ride, which ended up being almost $120. Because of the total distance we drove in, she also gave me a $300 tip to help with the boys' medicine. She said, putting the money in my hand carefully. $300. It was almost 2 months of Leo's medicine. It wasn't the $15,000 she had offered before, but it was a blessing all the same. And the best part? It was money I could accept with a clear conscience, because it didn't come with any strings attached. Yasmin, thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. She gave me a hug before getting out of the car. A sincere hug, one of those you can feel, comes from the heart. You made me believe there are still good people in this world. Thank you for testing me without me knowing, I replied, still emotional. It made me certain of the kind of man I really am. She waved through the window and went into that chic downtown building. I stayed there for a few minutes, processing everything that had happened that morning. It had been the strangest, most tense, and most transformative ride of my life. I got home at 5:30 in the morning, my heart still racing from everything I had experienced. I found Sarah awake in the living room with a cup of coffee in her hands, waiting for me to get home. She always got worried when I was late, especially at night. Everything okay, honey? Why did you take so long? She asked, coming to give me a kiss. I told her everything, the whole story, from the beginning. The mysterious passenger, the drive to the middle of nowhere, the $15,000 offer, my refusal, Yasmin's life story, the tests she did, everything. Sarah listened in silence, sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes wide. When I finished telling her, she was quiet for about 2 minutes, just looking at me. Then she came and gave me the biggest kiss of my life. I knew I had married the right man, she said, with tears in her eyes. I always knew you were special, but today I'm even more sure. You're not mad that I almost accepted? Almost anyone would have thought about accepting Ethan. The important thing is that you didn't. She held my face in both her hands. $15,000 would have solved our problems, but it would have created much worse ones. That was exactly it. Sarah has always been wise. She always knows the right things to say. I showed her the $300 from the tip and explained that it was a gift from Yasmin for Leo's medicine. Her eyes lit up with joy. God always provides for his children, she said. It might not be in the way we expect, but he always provides. We went into Leo's room, who was sleeping peacefully, breathing better than he had in the last few days. I stood there looking at him, thinking about how close I had been to betraying the trust that child had in me. Daddy's your hero, isn't he? Sarah whispered, stroking the sleeping boy's hair. And I'm going to keep being one, I replied. Do you think the story ended there? It didn't. 2 weeks later, I was working on a Thursday afternoon when I got a message on WhatsApp from a number I didn't know. It was a picture of a beautiful church in Miami with a woman from behind, with her arms open, looking at the altar. Under the picture, just one message. I talked to him today. Thank you. It was Yasmin. She had gone back home to Miami and was trying to rebuild her relationship with God. We kept in touch sporadically on WhatsApp. She would tell me about the new therapy she had started, about how she was learning to trust people again, about her plans to work with an NGO that helped women in vulnerable situations. I want to turn all this pain into something useful, she wrote to me in a message. I want to help other women who went through what I did. 6 months later, she sent me a picture that brought tears to my eyes. It was her with a guy, both of them smiling, at a family party. I met someone special at church, she wrote. And this time, I didn't do the test. I decided to trust him from the start. The smile in her photo was genuine. It was from someone who had rediscovered hope in life and in love. And you, Ethan, how are things over there? I sent a picture of me with Sarah and Leo at the beach. On a Sunday, we had gone to spend the day. Everything's good here. Leo's bronchitis is under control with a cheaper medication. The new pediatrician prescribed Sarah got a job at a clothing store downtown, and she really likes what she does. And I'm still out here driving the streets of Orlando. You know, you changed my life, right? You changed mine too. You made me certain of who I am. A year later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Yasmin was going to marry Ryan, the guy she had met at church. On the back of the invitation, a handwritten dedication to Ethan, the man who taught me that there is still goodness in the world. Thank you for giving me back my faith. I couldn't go to the wedding, Miami is far, and I didn't have the money for the trip, but I sent a message of congratulations and a prayer for her happiness. And me. Well, my life didn't change overnight. I continued working. As a rideshare driver, chasing after my family's livelihood, facing the difficulties that every working American faces, but something fundamental in me changed. You know, a deep certainty that I had made the right choice, that there are things that money can't buy, a peace of mind that I didn't have before, and more importantly, the certainty that our attitude can change someone's life forever. Leo is 8 now, healthy, his bronchitis under control with a cheaper medication that the new pediatrician prescribed. Sarah works at a clothing store downtown, and she really loves what she does. And I'm still here, with my 2015 Honda Accord that already has over 200,000 miles on it, taking people to their destinations. But there's something different now. Every time I get a ride, especially at night, I remember Yasmin. And I think that maybe every passenger who gets in my car has a story, a struggle, a hope. And that maybe, in some way, I can make a difference in someone's life. Because in the end, folks, what matters in life isn't the money we make, it's the kind of person we choose to be. And that choice, no one can make for us. It's ours. Every day, every hour, in every small or big decision we make. That night taught me that the greatest wealth we can have isn't in the bank. It's not in our pocket. It's in our clear conscience, in the respect we have for ourselves, in the certainty that we are people of integrity. And what about you? If you were in my position, $15,000 in front of you, a family in need, what would you do? I sincerely hope you would make the same choice I did, because some things in life are priceless. And one of them is being able to sleep with a clear conscience every night. That's it, folks. The story of the night that almost destroyed my life, or that saved it. To this day, I'm not sure. What I do know is that it was the night that showed me who I really am, and that no one can take away from me. If you liked my story, share it with your friends. Because everyone needs to know that there are still good people in this world, and that sometimes the greatest wealth we can have is simply being a person of integrity. A big hug to all of you, and may God bless each and every one of you. May we always choose to do what is right, even when it's hard. Because in the end, that's what defines us as human beings. And remember, our life is made of choices, and every choice we make says a lot about who we are. Always choose to be a good person. The world needs people like that.